I never take myself too serious. I take my job serious, but I don't take myself too seriously. I found myself the only African American judge for a little over a decade. One state representative said to me that if I chose not to run or was in some way defeated, that he did not believe that the Washtenaw County would have an African American judge in the next 100 years. My daughter was out there with me. There was nothing greater for me after that night at my victory party to have her. I went over to give her a hug, and she grabbed my face like I would sometimes grab her face, and she just looked me in the eyes. And, for a dad, there's nothing better than when your daughter just says, "Dad, I'm proud of you." And so that kind of makes it all worth it.
All right, everyone, here he is, the amazing, the incredible Judge Simpson. Judge Simpson, thank you so much for joining me today.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem.
I am just tickled that you are joining us. And like I said, people online absolutely love you. I think it's because you are a humble and caring person that it just comes out. And so I guess the first question is, back from the beginning, when did you know you wanted to become a judge?
That's a little bit more complicated than, I guess, on the surface it should be. Actually, it occurred to me at age 13 or 14 that that's what I wanted to do. So it's been quite a while. I had been shot in the eye when I was 13. And my family, we are ministers, we are scientists, we're doctors. There were no lawyers in our family. And my parents were not the type of people that would sue. And so because one of the young men that was involved in the shooting, their family, not only, all my parents wanted was an apology. I mean, I had to have surgery, almost lost my sight, but my parents just wanted an apology. And instead of an apology, they basically said the young man wasn't even there. And so my parents hired a lawyer. And without going through all of the details of it, the lawyer that they hired actually became my mentor in practice, and actually became my partner later on in practice. But he just the way he presented the things that he was doing, the things that he was showing me, inspired me to become a lawyer. And then I met the judge that was presiding over my case, Judge Hutchinson, in the probate court for Washtenaw County. I got to meet him, and he also inspired me to become a judge, and I decided that's what I want to do. And so I headed off on that journey from 13. Before that, I was going to be a veterinarian. So,
but always big plans. So that's incredible.
Yeah, always. I think so.
So how long were you an attorney before you became a judge?
I was an attorney 13 years, I think it was. Yeah, 13 years. So I was an associate in the firm of Hamilton McDonald for 3 years, and then at 3 years I was made partner, and it became Hamilton McDonald and Simpson. And then ultimately, after about 10 years, I received a call from the governor and was appointed to the bench. So.
Wow. And how long have you been a judge? Oh,
I have been a judge 25 years. I know I don't look it, but yeah, 25 years. So I'm actually in my 26th year.
That is so incredible. And how often are the elections where you are?
Every 6 years.
Every 6 years.
Yeah, I just ran for the 6th time, I think. No, 5th time. So, because I had to run immediately after being appointed, and then have run ever since then. So,
that is incredible. All right, so wow, are you comfortable talking about family? If you're not, we don't need to.
No, I'm comfortable. I don't. Yeah, that's okay. Fine.
Are you married?
No longer married. Have been
Okay.
divorced 10 years, so no. Have two beautiful kids who are my rock and just the light of my life. So
See, isn't that's beautiful? And they're adults now, correct?
that's what they tell me. They they have their, they are adults. My daughter is 26 and about to be 27, and my son is 22. So something I actually 23. So
That's exciting. I always say we have 7 children, and I always say every age is the most exciting age because I don't know, they're like a present, right? When they're
they,
little, you don't know where they're going to go, and where yours are right now, it's exactly the package is pretty much open, but there's still things
well,
that are going to come.
yeah, but I think one of the things that happened with my kids is that the pandemic sort of affected them in a way that I had not certainly anticipated. But the pandemic was the last year of my son's. That was his graduation year,
Oh, okay.
and would have been the second year for my daughter in college, and the school that she was at actually ended up shutting down because of the pandemic. And it never opened back up. It just could not afterwards continue. But it kind of just got them off to this interesting start. But it's been great watching them sort of battle their way through that and just move on. So
That's good. Yeah, it affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
wait,
It's
it did. It did.
so incredible. All right. So transitioning a little bit, you
Yes.
have broken some barriers where you are. You are the first African American man to sit on and I am going to try to, how do you say the name of your county? I have practiced this and it is not easy for me.
It's Washtenaw.
Washtenaw. Okay. On Washtenaw County bench. That has to just be an incredible, I don't know, that has to be an incredible feeling. And
Um,
also, how is
yeah.
that a thing? Is my question. But very excited that you're doing. But that it's taken this long. I don't know. These are
Well,
questions I
it
still have. But
yeah, it's interesting because sitting with our county seat is Ann Arbor, Michigan, and so you think of it as being a sort of progressive area and the like. Our bench, not so much. I mean, it just wasn't. And the difficulties with that, I always would try to not focus on that so much
right.
because I think that that can be problematic when you do. But I was appointed in 1999, and at that moment, I actually replaced the first African American woman district court judge. And there were, at that time, 3 African Americans of the 14. But shortly after my appointment, the one circuit court judge, male, left. And then the other circuit court level judge, she aged out eventually. But she was on the bench with me for probably about a decade or so. And then an interesting thing happened. The elections occurred, the appointments occurred regarding those positions, and I found myself the only African American judge for a little over a decade, which, in looking back on it, caused some problems. It was a tough road. What I didn't appreciate, I think, was that there were those in our community that when they would see me, they looked at me and it meant something to them that I don't think for myself I had necessarily acknowledged. And so I just decided I just would stay fast. I would hold this position. One state representative said to me that if I chose not to run or was in some way defeated, that he did not believe that the Washtenaw County would have an African American judge in the next 100 years. I mean, probably an exaggeration, but I understood the point that he was making. So.
It just, I don't know. I don't understand it because I grew up in a part of LA where I was not in the majority, right? And everyone, I don't know. And then I've lived in another place. I just don't understand this. So I just had to bring it up and acknowledge it because I think it is so important. Um, eh, and anyway, and
So
should it
do I.
be?
I mean,
I think it shouldn't be. It shouldn't even be a thing that we have to. I think, but unfortunately,
I think our system has led it to be a thing.
yeah.
And I always thought of our system as being relatively fair, at least in terms of, um, the alternative types of systems you can have. But what I didn't realize, because I had never been on that side of it, where I wasn't an attorney or I wasn't, I wasn't a defendant, is it is difficult for minority defendants to walk into a courtroom and nobody looks like you.
Yeah.
That's tough. And I I don't know that I appreciated it as much as I should have. And so I had to adjust myself to the fact that sometimes it wasn't even what was coming out of my mouth. It wasn't anything that I was saying or doing. Um, my face said something to a lot of people, and I truly didn't understand it or appreciate it as probably as much as I should have. But you know, they the community around here let me know that um, very very quickly at a certain point during my career. So.
And what's great is you're a judge who is just and fair, and that's the bottom line, right? And so, but it's good that that everyone in the community can feel represented when they go to your county court.
Yes.
Yeah, but and hopefully your children will live in a time where it shouldn't be, a thing that is unique.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yes. And my daughter is probably much more keen on that notion that maybe it shouldn't be this way. And in the elections, you were talking about the elections. I've only been opposed in one election, and I actually had to run a campaign. And as I'm running that campaign, my you know campaigns just assume the whole family. But my daughter was out there with me. She enjoyed the politicking, I guess, of it all and everything. And there was nothing greater for me after that night at my victory party to have her. I went over to give her a hug, and she grabbed my face like I would sometimes grab her face, and she just looked me in the eyes. And for a dad, there's nothing better than when your daughter just says, "Dad, I'm proud of you." And so that kind of makes it all worth it.
it does, yeah. Okay, and there's a great lead into what is your favorite part of being a judge?
Wow. I have a lot of favorite parts. It really is dealing with the people. It's hearing their stories, trying to understand their difficulties in life. But I'd have to say it's the people. I've had opportunities where people either wanted me to run for a higher court or take an appointment to a higher court, and I've turned those down because in the district court, I just get to see the people. If I were in a higher court, the circuit court, it'd be a lot more attorneys involved. You don't get the interaction that you get. So it's that part that is my favorite. Um, I guess, in the general sense, it's just dealing with the people.
So that is something that I've noticed when I watch you in court is that you genuinely have compassion and empathy for the defendants, even it's clear that they're wrong, but you seem to have compassion for everyone. Do you take that home with you if they're going through a really hard time, or are you able to just leave that at the courthouse?
I learned a long time ago that you can't take this job home with you. That doesn't mean that it leaves me entirely, but you can become frozen, I guess, in other things that you have to do in life if you take all of these cases home. When I first took the bench, I remember there were nights just dealing with some of the young people that may have addiction problems and the like, that, I would just be up all night thinking about what I could do. At some point in my career, I just said, I can't do this mentally and physically. I can't do it. So I kind of just shut it off, deal with it, and make sure, which I wasn't very good at before, making sure that I spend time with the other things in my life that are important to me, and do those things like my kids and the like. So
So what about sometimes there are people in there that are frustrating at best, and you deal with them, and then it seems like the next case you have a smile back on your face and you're ready to go completely fresh, which is very professional. But how do you do it?
I don't know how I don't know. I mean, I don't think that if somebody who is, as you say, challenging comes up, that I let that carry over to the next person. That next person didn't have anything to do with that. And, bottom line for me is that wouldn't be fair to them for me to carry that over. Um, I there have been others that have said I'm just very good at compartmentalizing, which in some ways I think I am. And so that case that might have this difficult person, it's now in its own little box over here, and now I've got to deal with this person. So, and I think you do it. The number of years that I've been doing it, that process becomes much easier to do. But
I think that's something we all need to do better.
yeah,
You're a great example of that, but yeah, I have a hard time. So yeah, that's a really good thing. So you talked about hobbies, balancing with hobbies. What kind of things do you like to do off the bench?
um, I I own property, so the kinds of things that I actually enjoy doing are those things that I'm not using that same part of my brain. So I like doing woodworking. I like doing things around my house, doing repairs around my house or other things that I have to do. I like going out into the woods. We have 4 dogs. And they're Australian cattle dog mixes and a huge one that we call the pony, which is not really our dog, which is my daughter's boyfriend's dog, but who's with us. But, I go out there with them. I just enjoy just watching them run around, their energy level. When I have them up and running, I just like getting on my 4-wheelers and just heading off into the woods and just riding around. So, and woodworking and stuff like that. And again, I think I do that because it's sort of refreshing to me. It uses a different part of my brain. It's not the same part that I use and sit here every day and use, and I just enjoy doing it. So those are the kinds of things that I do, and just spending time with my kids as they are growing up with all their what they believe are real hard challenges, which in the grand scheme of things probably aren't, but it is to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. Speaking of, okay, young adults, what do you think is the biggest issue facing our young adults today and influencing them, for example, to end up in court?
Um,
Or it can be more than one, the biggest
yeah,
things, factors.
I think one of the things is, and I'll say pre-pandemic, one of the things is they weren't really being listened to. We weren't, as a society, we weren't transcribing what they were really trying to say to us of how they view their world and, going into this world. And I still don't think we listen to them. And I think that just results in a lot of frustration, a lot of ways that they kind of abandon themselves and, get involved with drugs or get involved with gangs and do those kinds of things because we haven't been very good, at least my generation hasn't been very good of creating sort of hope for them. And I think that that's continued through the pandemic, but I see another thing that is happening with some of our young people, and that is with the pandemic and sort of the disconnect from other people. You don't see the socialization. So sometimes they don't know how to act in a particular circumstance because they've never come across it. Everything is through social media. So they haven't experienced a lot of things. When I was growing up, if there was an issue or something, I experienced it in some way. I didn't hear about it, see somebody else go through it, and then try to pretend I'd like to know what I'd do and that kind of thing. And so they just don't have that socialization in a lot of ways. And you see that kind of when they are in court here and they'll lash out. And I have to be mindful that I don't think they really intend to necessarily be rude or they intend to be disrespectful. I just think they don't know anything different than that. And I think that leads them into a lot of other problems. So if you take that concept and they're out on the street and they interact with an officer, they interact in a different way that officer may not like for them to act. And they then lash out. Next thing you know, they picked up a charge. Now they're here. Something else, and even with their parents, they're doing that, or those that are caring for them, or other people that they just don't interact correctly. So we see that happening. I think the other thing is, when I look at it, one of the challenges for our kids is that the drugs that are out there are some amazing things. I guess I'll put it that way. And they are getting themselves hooked on these things and not being able to sort of steer their lives or even get away from some of the drugs and the like. And I don't think at any point in our society we didn't have drugs and things like that. But the ones that are out there now are, if you give somebody drugs or alcohol, and they don't have hope, don't see a future, that's what they're going to do. And that's a huge danger for our kids now.
And I think it's interesting. You said, people, they don't feel heard because I have a podcast for people over 50 and a lot of people over 50 don't feel heard.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me because I've learned if I have advice to give, if I see someone younger struggling with something and I say, you should do whatever, they do not want to hear that, But if we ask them, can I share with you? And I think maybe that's reaching out to that, letting them give you permission and letting them be even heard in whatever. But I think you bring up a very valid point. And I remember when I was younger and people would say, when I was your age, oh, it
Yeah,
used to make me so mad, right?
exactly.
And maybe I think this is words of wisdom right here that we just really need to be more mindful of that and
Yeah,
let them feel heard.
yeah, and I've told my staff, I said sometimes when people come up, I almost feel like I have to be an interpreter because not everybody's going to speak to me in the King's English. They're not going to say it in the most direct way. But if you truly, if you allow them the opportunity to speak, and then you truly are listening to what they're saying, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that the words that they're using are the proper words, but they just listen to what they're saying. A lot of times you can get to the core of what's really troubling that person. Where are they in life? What's really the ultimate issue, particularly when we're in the court that we have to sort of deal with. So
I think that is like mic drop. Everyone needs to listen to that. But guys, I think since 2020, a lot of people aren't listening to anyone. They just it is a strange time right now.
it is a very strange time. I was up talking to some law students at Michigan State last Friday, and it made me, one of the things I said to them is I said, you need to go to the courthouse and you need to watch what attorneys do, see how others are acting, and don't just think that you know what's going to happen once you enter the courtroom. And, they're kind of looking at me kind of crazy, but what they don't realize is those 2 years or year and a half really that we didn't have people in our courtrooms, all of those attorneys just didn't get the basic etiquette in a courtroom, like standing when you're addressing the judge. And I'm thinking these are sort of highly intelligent people that and have seen it, I'm sure, 1,000 times, but something didn't translate for them. And so I'm thinking if people on that level are having that difficulty, then people on other levels or doing other things are having the same difficulty. They're just acting in a way, not because they want to be just, the attorneys, when the student attorneys came in here, it's not that they were trying to be disrespectful to the court or anything along those lines. They just didn't know, which was just, in a certain respect, kind of mind-boggling to me. But I just think that translates in with other people into other parts of life, how to conduct yourself in our society that we have now. So.
And you're talking about university, and you're a professor as well, right?
Yes.
Is it?
Well, I currently am not really teaching a great deal. Yes, I taught at Cooley Law School and also at Washtenaw Community College. So for
And that's
20,
been 20. Oh, I'm sorry, 20 years. Is that
20 years at Washtenaw, and I think five years, I think, at Cooley Law School.
wow? That's incredible.
I enjoyed that. I really did. I love dealing with students and young people, especially when they're just inquisitive about, just the world and giving them different things to think about. So,
What made you decide to do that?
my parents were both educators. So I think that part of me came natural. It's what I saw growing up. My dad worked at the community college here, went into the social work angle and dealt with, college students as a counselor there. But he also taught some classes at one point. And my mother was an early preschool. She was a preschool teacher and early education teacher. So, you know, and we have professors and the like in our family, and so that part of me is, like I said, that's almost natural for me to want to be a professor. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we go, is there anything else that you want to say or share?
I would suggest this, whether it be myself or whether it be somebody else, that people participate in our judicial system. I think our judicial system is certainly in a lot of ways unique, but I think a lot of Americans don't know what their judicial system is, and how it really works. And if they get an opportunity to, say, talk to a judge or talk to attorneys in there about what's really going on, I think that they see something, or at least certainly have a different impression of it. So I as part of the reason I stream and have continued to, and a lot of my colleagues don't, is because I want people to see what our court system is. I want them to see how it works, because this courtroom that I'm sitting in now doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people. And as I've said before, I'm just a steward holding this position. Sooner or later, there'll be somebody that will hold this position, and they've got to respect it. But it really belongs to everybody that walks through that door.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for answering so many questions, and keeping that incredible smile on your face the entire time.
No, thank you. Thank you
You're
for that.
amazing. So thank you again. I really, truly am honored that you spent the time with me. So
And I appreciate the invitation. I really do. This was enjoyable for me.